The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. "You call this progress?" Gold whispered, a dead calm washing over him. "Making Pokemon fight to the death while their opponents are clearly too strong?" "Strong Pokemon. Weak Pokemon." Karen grimaced and turned her back on Gold, as if she could not bear to look at him a second longer. "That is only the selfish perception of people. Truly skilled trainers should try to win with their favorites." For a moment, the statement struck Gold speechless. The next instant, the words were out of his mouth before he was even aware of them, like a dam breaking loose. "That has got to be the most asinine nonsense I've ever heard! Of all the stupid ideals! See? That right there!" Karen spun around in a burst of rage that matched Gold's, jabbing out a fingertip at his forehead and forcing him back. "That's the problem! Who are you to speak to me like that? I'm the trainer who never got to train his favorite Pokemon because your garbage policy got him killed!" Gold shouted, thrusting his head forward and meeting her eye to eye. "I and many others! God knows I share the blame, but you've got a lot more to answer for!" Karen's hand whipped out and dealt him a hard slap across the face. Gold stumbled back at the stinging blow and held his cheek in dismay. From the side, Morty stood rigid, but Gold saw his eyes widen at the escalation of events. "Didn't your mother ever teach you any manners?" Karen asked in a soft but poisonous voice. "I have no patience for loudmouth children who think they know everything. There's only one thing I want to know before I'm finished with you." She crossed her arms and leaned down again until they were nose to nose. Karen's face was so white and smooth, it looked to Gold like a mask of death up close. "What Pokemon have you been using, little showman?" The question caught Gold off guard. "What?" "The Magician Act." Karen's smile was a display of teeth. "Don't play dumb. There's nobody here to impress but me." Gold swallowed, his thoughts drifting back to Spirit in the thicket with the goldberries. "The Phoenix was with me," he answered. "I never kept that a secret." Karen struck him across the face again, harder this time, in the same spot. It wasn't a closed fist, but the pain was astounding. Gold reeled back and held his cheek with both hands, seeing bright flashes at the edge of his vision. Between Morty's ghostly energy and a subtle darkness that emanated from Karen, the suffering was much worse than it should have been. In a small corner of his mind, Gold knew he should be terrified for his life. There was something, however, guarding him from fear now. Something that had arrived at the same time as Karen. "I adore a good story," said Karen through her grimace of a smile. "Really, I do. But right now, I'm not in the mood. I want the truth. What did you use?" "I never used Spirit," Gold panted insistently. "You can't just use Ho-oh." Karen raised her arm again, and Gold cringed back, expecting another blow to the face. Instead, she raised 3 fingers. "The Slowpoke incident went viral," she said, lowering her ring finger. "But I can pass that off as clever video editing." She lowered her middle finger. "Same for the Machop in the Goldenrod Gym, whatever those girls may say." Karen shoved her index finger, still extended, under Gold's chin. "What I can't explain is that earthquake in Goldenrod City, right after you were caught and put in holding. Everyone within 20 miles felt it. It's a wonder that the radio tower still stands. Do you expect me to believe that it was you, Miracle Man? Or was it Lance? Gold could do nothing but look at her. Karen had gone from sinister to slightly crazed in the last few seconds. She reached down to her waist, and a Pokeball appeared in her hand. Was it Lance? Karen pressed, gripping the Pokeball with white fingers. Only his Pokemon are strong enough to cause such a tremor! Answer me! Gold just shook his head in wonder. Would you believe anything I said? He answered. Karen stood before him, still as a statue, the Pokeball poised to throw. Seconds passed, and she seemed to collect herself in a frosty calmness. For a fleeting moment, Gold saw her eyes light up in a cold resolve, and then the Pokeball went spinning at the flick of her wrist. There was a flash of light, half blinding in the prevailing night's darkness. It faded into the form of a giant black dog, powerfully built, with two wickedly sharp horns growing from its head. With bared fangs, it gave a deep and menacing growl. Gold had never seen such a creature before, but by the skeletal pattern on its back and the forked tail, he could only liken it to a hellhound. I love Dark-type Pokemon, said Karen, returning to the soft venom of her original voice. I find their wild, tough image to be so appealing, and they're so strong. Once again, Gold knew that he ought to be mortally afraid. However, all his mind could think was, so much for strong and weak being only the selfish perception of people. Karen, come on, pleaded Morty, speaking for the first time since she had appeared. What are you doing? Karen shot him a dangerous look, her eyes reduced to slits. You have something to say, Gym Leader? From her tone, the question was meant to be rhetorical, with the only acceptable answer being, no, ma'am. But Morty, pale-faced and visibly shaking, responded in a quavering voice. We are both from Ecruteak City. There, legend tells of a rainbow-hued Pokemon that will come down to appear before a truly powerful trainer. He motioned at Gold. I can't speak to this boy's training abilities, but I've known him for most of my life. In him, I saw a shadow of the person who will make that Pokemon appear. Morty swallowed, his face shining with sweat. If you brought your Houndoom out to test him, to test the legend, I can't have a part in it. Karen stared at him, open-mouthed, but with a baffled smile. She looked as if she couldn't decide between rage and mirth, and seemed precariously balanced between the two. At last she laughed, the scornful laugh of a skeptic who realizes the believer's sincerity. She glanced back and forth between Gold and Morty, the enemy and the coward, helpless before the teeth and sinew of her great hunting hound. Her look was predatory. That's your excuse for this insubordination? A fairy tale? She scoffed. You should have gone for nepotism. At least then, you would have retained some semblance of dignity. Her smile abruptly vanished. But if you want to settle this by Dark Age standards, I'm all about the dark. Karen pointed at Gold. Houndoom, give him a trial by fire.